Welcome in, guys. What's going on? What's going on? Ooh, fire. Okay, okay. A few minutes, guys, and I'll get started here. Let everyone trickle in. What's going on? What's going on? I gotta say, this new bear den is serious stuff. What? Hilarious. What's going on, Izzy? Well, today was an interesting day. At least we had, interesting intraday price action. Powell actually did do something to the markets, gave us a nice little drop just so we could squeeze right into the close. So definitely some beautiful little price action that we had into the day. The only I want to say concern about today was that today's close was just not very convincing about the fact of where the market's pretty much headed. And I'm pretty sure you probably heard Avery kind of echoing that sentiment in which I think he's still at this hour trying to figure out his projections based on EW, pretty much where the market's really headed to. And so that was the only concerning part about today, was that it left us a little bit with a pause to concern where the market's really headed to this week. And then the other factor is that we have so many onslaught of other people talking this week as well. There's so many other Fed speakers this week throughout the entire multiple of days here. That's going to be the other frustrating part. So I would say that if you are not used to volatility, this is one of those weeks where you definitely want to take it easy or maybe take it off, right? Because the fact that you're going to have a lot of people speaking and you're going to see a lot of fluctuation in intraday price action like you saw today. So that's just something to give you a heads up on. But as I pretty much dive into SPY here real quick, and my watch list today is relatively small. I don't have anything that I'm particularly watching that maybe stands out to me per se. Kind of just taking it day by day, waking up the next morning and looking to see what the market gives me right now, right? That's usually what you do when you get an uncertainty of where the market's headed, is that you wake up and you just play it level by level, and that's basically what I'm kind of doing here right now. But what I'm pretty much watching off of SPY here off the daily is obviously you see my downtrend line, which was that gray line. We had that downtrend break pretty clean. That was back from the 16th. We also have an anchored VWAP, which is from the recent high that we had from the beginning of January, January 4th. And what was actually interesting is that we actually hit that anchored VWAP back on the 17th of last week. And then we also ended up right on Friday. We broke through that very convincingly off of that anchor VWAP. And today we actually held that anchor VWAP on that drop from Powell intraday. We held it as a good support. So that was something that actually was a little bit more of like a calm to me in the sense that I don't think we get anything drastic to the downside unless one of these Fed speakers really say something that pretty much wrecks the market and echoing the sentiment of what Powell had to say today. That will be the only thing that I think maybe as far as that, other than the overseas interaction that's going on with China and Ukraine and Russia, right? So that's the only other concern as far as what your downfall could potentially be in losing this anchored VWAP. But nonetheless, today was a good sign. The fact that we held that anchored VWAP on that downtrend, and that was really what actually the support level I was watching here intraday. Good sign that we bounce off of it. Now, if we do get continuation tomorrow, obviously we're looking up to take out today's high of 446.46 on SPY. And then my bigger target would be this 449 half, in which you hear a lot of people saying that 450 is where we're likely headed to. That will be where I would potentially look to target, is that 449 half. And that will likely be tomorrow if we get that convincing move above today's high. Otherwise, if we fail to hold this anchor VWAP, and that's going to be the test, we lose that 441.22 spot, then we're flirting, we're coming down towards 437, 438 is where we're going to end up likely trying to find our next support on any kind of pullback here tomorrow. So that's what I'll be watching for. So downside potential, I'm watching 438, tap 437. Otherwise, if we make a move over today's high of that 446 half, then we're basically looking to target 449 half, and that's what I'll be looking at. All right. So that's pretty much for SPY. That's just playing it level by level, and just using it off of my anchored view up for knowing where our support was from last week Thursday. We broke through that anchor view up on Friday, and we held it perfectly off of today as a support. So that was pretty much using VWAP just beautifully in resistance and support off of that. All right. Just a few other names that pretty much stand out, but pretty much are common names here. One was Tesla. Tesla pretty much just stood out to me. Nothing in particular per se, but the only fact that I was watching is that I am still watching this very key level that we pretty much tapped intraday. But I was watching this 927, 928 mark. That's where we had our intraday resistance. And as we see, we tapped that level and we rejected, and we couldn't even get a nice squeeze into the close with the overall market. I think Apple was the one that actually really squeezed with into the end of the day. So that was a little bit of a lackluster type of price action for Tesla. So I'm gonna look to see if tomorrow if we reclaim this 927, 928 level, and then we could take out this high from today of 943, and I'll be watching this towards that 951 level. So those are the levels I'm watching for the upside. Otherwise, if we can't reclaim this 927, 928, maybe we get some kind of gap up and we retest in the morning. If we reject that, then I have us potentially retesting support down towards 888, 8 and down. That's between the zone here I have as low as 878. So that's what I'll be watching for the downside price action on Tesla. But obviously that 927, 928, that's really the big level that I'm watching here to see if we break over and create a support off of that level, or do we act as resistance and reject, in which that's going to be where I look to enter puts. All right. The other one that caught my attention also was Apple. Obviously, Apple was the other one that had relative strength with Tesla early on this morning, and they pretty much held their own for most of the day. The only interesting part about Apple here is that based on the recent high that we had from that January 4th, and that was pretty much what you saw off of my SPY chart as well, is that we smacked right into that anchored VWAP. That was my only concern right there, and we rejected it right away at that 166.35 mark. So I'm gonna look tomorrow to see if we can end up getting a break over that mark of that 166.35. Otherwise, if we start to pull back, then I'm looking at 162. This is 162.85 down towards 162 flat nearly. All right, and that's what I'll be watching. I did snatch up some like 160 puts, pretty much kind of like how Dapper said on live, maybe as like a hedge basically. And that's what I did. We know Apple's pretty much is the market for that matter. I know you heard a lot of people say that for most of the time. And given the fact that Apple has had so much relative strength compared to a lot of other names in the market for a multitude of days now since we had this V-shaped recovery from the middle of March here, this is pretty much why I'm looking to see if we are going to get any kind of rollover, especially with all these Feds talking this week. Then Apple's going to be that one that I'm looking to see pretty much as it led this entire rally. I'm going to look to see if it takes the downfall in which we reverse to the downside. So that's why I do have Apple as a hedge. Obviously, it's also cheaper as well in terms of premium. So I did like that one as well. If we do get over the 166.35, then I am going to be targeting upside though, in which I'll pretty much scalp calls off of this between 167 half up towards 168 is what I'll be watching for the upside price action. All right. Other one was Facebook, and I know that Avery was pretty much talking about Facebook today because of the amount of just straight up call flow that we had on this was just insanely crazy on Facebook. The other thing that caught my attention was from that gap down that we had from February 3rd, we actually hit into that the VWAP today. We rejected off of it, and we pretty much today's price action we basically closed under it, and we almost had a near term breakdown. I'm glad to see that it actually held its own. We saw the buyers pretty much step in today, so I understand why the buyers pretty much stepped in to buy it up. They didn't want it to roll over, and obviously market pretty much still being in limbo right now. You would anticipate that they're gonna buy it up and they're gonna end up retesting this anchored VWAP here at that 215.57 mark. So if we do get that move over that anchor VWAP, then I am looking at price action here between 219 to 220 is what I'm looking at for upside. Otherwise, if we break down below today's low, below that 207.63 mark, then I'm targeting here down towards 205 half to 205 flat is what I'll be looking at. All right. So that's another one that's on my radar. And then just the last one was Boeing. Given the fact that we had the Boeing news today, I think it's just justified to keep this one on your watch list. Again, this is kind of like a similar situation. Watching Anchor VWAP back from February 10th here. Obviously, we see that we ended up rejecting it from Friday's price action. And then we had the news that pretty much felt like it was right on cue in terms of being the fact that it was right into that uptrend resistance, and we made that basically was an ascending broadening wedge type action here. So we'll be looking to see if we end up getting a move over this 187.27 mark tomorrow and we get the gap fill here. Otherwise, if we end up breaking below today's low, that 180.61, then we're flirting with pretty much, I have my downside target here towards 175 to 176 is what I'll be watching. So this is going to be an interesting one. I'll likely see if we end up testing the gap fill. If we reject the gap fill, then that'll be the spot where I think it's going to be the ultimate risk reward in terms of getting into puts rather early than waiting for it to break the support. And that's why I say risk reward ratio obviously is that I'm pretty much, I know my risk is the gap fill, and that's why I'm looking to enter on the rejection of the gap fill if we do get that. Otherwise, if you get over the gap fill, then you're pretty much playing it for calls and good completion of the gap fill here that's sitting at that 190.10 level. All right. So I think just the downside though is a lot more pretty much what I would say upside for your potential profit, other than pretty much looking to play this little upside move here between the 187 to 190, which is only about a $3 upside there. All right. So I think the downside is a little bit more favored than your upside in terms of calls there. All right. Other than that, those are the names that pretty much just stood out to me. The names that are pretty much, on the broader market that's holding us up, and pretty much Boeing being the one that's news related, Facebook being the one with calls that are so heavily into the flow, and then Apple and Tesla that had the most relative strength today. All right. So that's pretty much the watch list for tomorrow. Just taking a look at the three names that you had going on here. Actually four. I'll take a look at DPZ. I know that Nike's up after hours. I'll take a peep at it real quick. I think it was up about $5 or $6 when I last looked at it. The the pizza indicator. Wow, I have not looked at the pizza indicator in quite a bit. Let's see first. Let's see where our anchored VWAP actually lies. That might be a pretty much a telling story right now. So we're pretty far from where the anchored VWAP is. I think we got the closest we got was back from March 1st. That was pretty much the closest we got to the anchored VWAP. Other than that, though, looking to see where our potential zones are, in which I do see that we're potentially making our way here down towards our demand zone here, is which I would look for this particular zone right here, is where I'll be looking for. This is my zone in which I think that you're going to start to see buyers pretty much look to accumulate here. I'll probably change the color here so you get a better visual of that. So between this level here, between this 393 down to 391 mark, that's what I'll be looking for in terms of where your potential support is, where you see your buyer stepping in as your demand zone. Otherwise, if you are looking to hold this particular level here, maybe we can find some that short-term support that you're pretty much looking at that 395 mark and avoiding the demand zone. If we can hold that 395 and we get back the upside, then you're potentially looking at breaking over this resistance point right here. Right over this mark here, over that 414 mark is where your potential upside is, and you're going to have the most heavy resistance. And that's what I would be looking for. So we hold 395, then we can make a reversal back to 414. Otherwise, you're looking demand zone to hold here between that 391 to 393 for buyers to step in before this pretty much looks to tumble even down to the lows. All right. So that's pretty much how I would look at with the pizza indicator, but nothing here particularly says that I want to go out and buy it just yet. Me, ideally, personally, I would wait for it to get down to 391 to 393 demand zone and then look to see how buyers react in that zone. Otherwise, if you lose that zone, then you're pretty much caught in a nosedive, and that's what you don't want to be in. So I would wait for it. 391, 393 would be the ideal spot in which I think is the ultimate risk reward to either, if it holds, you play the upside. If it breaks down, then you look to get into puts and take it down below this recent low here of that 381.24. All right. Other than that, the other one you mentioned was LAC. I haven't looked at this one at all. I do say this chart actually does look pretty nice. I think that's one thing I can mention. Anchor view up. Let's take a peep. So we are over anchor view up. That's definitely a good sign here. If I'm looking for potential supply in which you're gonna see some sellers pretty much step in here, this is that spot right here in which I'm looking at. This is where you're gonna see your sellers start to step in here. Whoever's currently holding a position here. I'll put it. I'll put it in bright green. You can see it in bright green. So right between this level here, between this 33 half up to 34, that's what you're looking to target on LAC, that's where I would see where you're going to end up having some sellers step in, and which is going to draw back maybe a pullback, or you end up getting a full on rejection for that matter. So between that 33 to 33 half to 34 is what you're looking at for your upside. That gives you about a $3.50 move or so from current levels. The other thing is that you're going to be looking to hold your support here on that anchor VWAP now. That's going to, it acted as resistance, but now it's going to act as support at that 29 and a quarter level. So I would look for 29.25 to hold. That would be the ideal buy-in spot if you do get any kind of pullback. Otherwise, you buy in here and you pretty much look to add on your position on any kind of pullback into that support of the anchor VWAP. And then that will be where your upside is again 33 half to 34 is what you're looking at, in which you're going to see some sellers start to step in there. But that's how I would particularly play it. Otherwise, if you're going long term, obviously, then your next support, your next resistance level that you're particularly watching will be right around this 35, 36 mark is what I want to say. 36 is that ideal resistance level that you're going to see sellers step in which that will be your PT number two, basically, if we can clear that 34 mark. All right. Other one someone mentioned was looking at Nike. Let's see, did Nike do anything else? Damn, actually, what a nice rip off of Nike. What a beautiful V-shaped recovery. Obviously, you see the nice little V-shaped bottom. If we look at the recent high, well, she has some beautiful upside. If there's actual continuation going on this. Otherwise, let's see if I could look at the weekly. See if there's a major spot that we're looking at in terms of this. Let's see if there's a zone that I'm watching here. Let's see. What are we particularly watching? Let's see. Let's see. I think this might be particularly your spot right around here. Yep. So this is where I would look for upside here. And obviously we're gonna be looking for continuation here off of Nike. It's up about 6.5% roughly. If we get continuation on the upside, I'm looking for this to get close enough for a move towards the anchored VWAP. And then also testing the median here. As you see, we had, this is looking like a double top formation. You have the first leg, and now you had that right leg to the downside here. I'm looking to retest this little median here that we had as an intra drop here off of this, which we'll call technically would be your neckline of the double top, in which that's between 146 up towards 147. So that's about a $2 zone in which you're watching for. That will be your potential upside and continuation off of that. Now, granted the fact that it's kind of hard to say by morning where it's going to be sitting at. Obviously, with analyst upgrades, that usually changes quite a bit of things by morning. But other than that, if we can hold this level, what I'll be watching to hold by morning is 136.27, around that. 136, I want to say ballpark, 136.30 will be the ideal levels which I will be watching to see if we hold or would potentially be my dip buy entry right now as it currently stands. All right. So that's what I'll be watching. 136.30 will be that spot in which I would want to go long on. Um, Probably get a call debit spread, go up maybe about 2 to 3 weeks. Give yourself some good ample amount of time, and then you target this up to that 146, 147 mark to test the neckline of the double top action. All right, and that's how I would particularly look at this. You may likely get close enough towards that anchor VWAP from that recent high of November 1st, in which that's pretty much going to be in confluence towards that move of the 146, 147, as you pretty much, it'll probably take a little bit of time here to get out to that price target, but that'll likely bring it in right within the confluence of that anchor VWAP and your neckline. All right, and that's how I would particularly look to play out to Nike. But I think a call debit spread will be the ideal spot to be looking for in terms of the strategy of how to play that. All right. Looking at the last two real quick. Before I wrap it up here, guys. Chipotle and UPST, and I'll probably call it a wrap here, guys, as I wrap up our daily session. Looking at Chipotle, this kind of does look like a little bit of a descending broad and wedge type action that we have going on. If I pretty much pull up your downtrend resistance, it's kind of very much in confluence with where your anchored VWAP is. So this spot or right around the 1625 mark is right where you're looking at. It's pretty much telling me 1620 is where your anchored VWAP spot is. That's also in confluence pretty much where which your downtrend resistance is on this descending broad and wedge action, in which if I draw out the downside here, you're pretty much sitting right about here in that confluence, in which that's your descending broad and wedge that you're looking at. So you definitely want to see the break over that 1620 mark, over the 1620 mark. Then I would be looking to make a move here right up towards your prior resistance that you had, sitting right around in this level here, in which you'll get a move up towards 1720, towards 1750 will be that range in which I will be looking to play this out of. But you definitely need to break over the 1620.79 mark before you can end up getting a potential play up towards the over 1720 towards 1750 mark, in which that would be my potential range, in which I would see sellers starting to step in on this one. That was quite a drop that you had today also. Granted the fact that I know that Google pretty much dropped, Shop dropped, so quite a big the big names pretty much dropped across the board. But you definitely want to see this get over that 1620.79 mark on that anchor VWAP. Otherwise, you're likely going to end up continuing to chop, and you'll see a little bit more of downside price action here. The ideal support level that I'll be watching here for this to hold will be this 1461 mark. That would be the ideal spot that I would want to hold. So I think that would be probably your ultimate risk reward if you're trying to buy on support. If that's your potential strategy, usually it will be buying on support. It will be that 1462, 1461 is that ideal buying spot, and you pretty much use that as your support and your risk off basically. All right. Last one that you pretty much mentioned was UPST. Let's take a peep. What are we looking at? I think Avery was the one looking at UPST not that long ago, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was. Let's see. What am I looking at real quick? Let's see what our anchor VWAP tells us first. All right, so pretty much identified resistance right now is that 157.87 level, in which the only time we got close enough was February 28th. That was the closest that we got in terms of that. In terms of pretty much looking at your support levels right now, my ideal support level, in which I would say that is your ideal potential buy-in type spot here right now, will be right on this level of this 113 mark. This 113 mark actually signified your pretty much your base of when you took off back between, this was basically June of 2021 as we pretty much fully retraced. That was that level in which I would look to see if we end up retracing back down. That's potentially your demand zone here. That 113 down to the 106 mark would be potentially what I'll be watching for in terms of that. Otherwise, if you get a break here, if I would see a move over this price action here, over this 136 mark, then I would potentially look to play that right into the anchor VWAP that's sitting at 157. But if I can't get that move over that 136, then it's going to be very tough to pretty much get a continuation and even get close enough to that anchor VWAP. So that would be my only concern. I haven't really played UPS too much. I usually stay silent on this one. It's just very much a range bound type of movement right now. Right now, until it really gets a meaningful price action and a nice follow through, I think you're pretty much in a chop zone right now, is what I would say. Obviously, there's no pretty much defined downtrend resistance still at this moment. You try to attempt to break that downtrend resistance, and you pretty much got right close enough to the VWAP, and you came right back down, in which now you just put yourself within a range, basically, instead of any kind of meaningful reversal just yet. All right. But other than that, that's kind of wrap up our session here, guys. And I think that'll be it for today. Let's see what tomorrow pretty much brings for us. And again, just taking it day by day. Not really forcing anything in terms of overnight positions or my size of my positions that I would normally play. Just keeping it very normal, very casual right now. Just gonna be a very busy week with all the feds that we have talking again. So if you didn't hear me say that earlier, be cautious about that. You're gonna have those kind of intraday drops like we had today with Powell. So be cautious about that in terms of your size, your positions, and your overnight positions as well. All right. But other than that, I think that kind of wraps up today, guys. Hopefully, my small watch list maybe gave you guys a better idea of what to be watching, levels to be watching. But that'll wrap it up for today. I'll see you guys on live tomorrow morning. And that'll be all. Later, guys. I'm out.